Excellent. Thanks, Alex. And welcome to everybody joining us tonight for the first community workshop for Denver's first One Water plan. It's right at 5 o'clock here. We've got a full agenda. So I see we've got a lot of folks still coming into our meeting. So we're going to get started here and make good use of everybody's time. So Lexi, if you want to get us started onto the next slide. Excellent. So many of you are probably wondering, what is One Water and why am I here? What's the purpose of this meeting? And so, Lexi, if you want to go to the animation, the spoiler alert is it's all One Water, but you should stick around for the full meeting anyway, because there's a lot of nuances and really important interconnections between the rain, the stormwater, the groundwater, the recycled water, the drinking water, and the wastewater, and how it all works together, and how we manage that in the future is what this is all about. And it's all One Water and it's all connected. It begins with us here at the neighborhood level, but it also has citywide implications. This is a citywide plan and it has regional implications. And as a headwater state, there's even national implications for us in Colorado. And of course, with climate change, all water is really a global issue these days. So purpose of the meeting, we're breaking it into 3 parts. Lexi, if you want to bring up that animation. Part 1 is really to inform and answer the question, what is One Water? Define that, make sure we're all on the same page there before we really dig in and start to discuss. We've got a lot of Q&A built in tonight, which you'll see in a minute. And then we want to make sure that everybody on the call tonight can really understand the roadmap and what the planning process is looking like, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So translating that into an agenda, what we're going to do in those 3 parts is really introduce you to the team, take a look at all of the partners who formed this unprecedented coalition of water resource agencies, look into the background, the 101 of what is One Water, and then what does that mean for Denver? Why is the project needed? What are the goals? What are the benefits? And what are the planning processes? And then from part 2, we're going to look at what makes a project a good One Water project? What criteria make it a good candidate? And we're going to hear from the folks at National Western Center tonight as a quick snapshot, a mini case study on how One Water can be applied to a project here locally. We also have a community survey that's coming up, so we're going to give you a quick preview of that. And then we're going to look at that roadmap, and you'll see there are 5 discussion zones built into the meeting here tonight. So we're going to be pausing at 5 different points, and you're going to be able to submit your questions via the chat, and we'll answer as many of those questions as we can at each of these 5 discussion points. You can also raise your virtual hand and ask your question that way. And Alex is going to be screening our questions and making sure we hear from as many people as possible. Alex, you want to tell us a little bit more?
Sure, thanks, Miles. So I'm sure everyone on the call by now is very familiar with Zoom, but just a heads up, all attendees are currently in listen only mode. And then if you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to send it to me via chat. Right now our chat capabilities are set up so you'll only be able to message the host, that's me. And so I'll receive your question. And then if you'd like to ask it live during one of the Q&A sessions, please raise your hand, and you'll see, you can find the raise your hand function if you click on the participants button, and then you'll see the option to indicate that you'd like to ask your question live. So I think that's how we'll handle it. And then of course, if you have any technical difficulties or having a hard time finding that raise your hand button, please feel free to shoot me a chat and I'm happy to help you through it. Thanks, Miles.
Thanks, Alex. And as Alex said, we're going to be stopping at multiple points, so you don't need to wait for one of those discussion zone Q&As. Submit your comments anytime, and we want to get through as many questions from you as possible. We're going to get into introductions here in a moment with the whole core planning team. First, I want to take just a minute to introduce myself. I'm Miles Graham. I'll be facilitating the meeting. We're running the community engagement for this project with my colleague, Alex, who you just heard from. So with that, Dave, I want to flip it to you, our project manager, to take us through introductions.
All right. Thanks, Miles. Let's start off with, before we get into the introductions with the core planning team, the agencies that Miles referred to that have come together for this plan. Obviously the city, it is going to be a city plan. And our partners are the Mile High Flood District, the Greenway Foundation, Denver Water, Metro Wastewater Reclamation District, and the Colorado Water Conservation Board. We did get a grant from the Colorado Water Conservation Board as part of the Colorado State Plan, Colorado State Water Plan. And then contributing partners are Denver, Mile High Flood District, and the Greenway Foundation is the grantee on that. And then Denver Water and Metro are just very willing partners in this endeavor. So we'll go through the introductions to those key folks right now. My name is Dave Jewella. I'm a water resources engineer with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure at the City and County of Denver. And we are responsible for building, maintaining, and operating the public infrastructure within the city, including stormwater pipes, sanitary, and also the South Platte River and its tributaries. And I'll hand it over to Sarah, of course.
Hi, I'm Sarah Course. I'm a city planner within community planning and development. Our department is responsible for visionary city planning and to ensure safe, responsible, and sustainable building and development. And we're really excited to be part of the One Water Plan, and we hope that it'll provide the guidance we need for decisions we make now and well into the future. I'll hand it off to Kathleen.
Hi, this is Kathleen Levesque, Assistant Director of Parks Planning with Denver Parks and Recreation. Denver Parks and Recreation is responsible for all of our urban and mountain parks and centers. And the One Water Plan is important to Denver Parks and Recreation because it aligns with our mission of using resources wisely in order to maintain the health of our city and our residents, and in particular, the health of our waterways, water conservation in our parks and buildings, resiliency of our tree canopy, and recreational opportunities. I'll hand it off to Barbara.
And if we go to the next slide, Barb Chatunga, I don't know if we've got you on.
I was talking there for 30 seconds until I realized I was on mute. So good evening, everybody. I'm Barbara with the Mile High Flood District. And, you know, as an organization, we exist to protect people like us, property and the environment through preservation, mitigation, and education. And One Water really matters to us because we want to just create one space for all of us to use that is high value for whatever that value is, while remaining low maintenance stewards of tax dollars. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Devin with the water connection.
So hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Somebody give a thumbs up.
We got you, Devin.
Devin Buckles, Director of the Water Connection, which is the policy and water resources arm of the Greenway Foundation. And some of you know about us. We're the 501c3 that's been around since 1974, working to reclaim the South Platte River watershed. We have three main categories of work that we do. We engage in enhancements like infrastructure improvements, parks, trails, open space, water quality improvements, river corridor enhancements, actual infrastructure that you can see and touch. We also have an environmental education arm called SPREE, and then we have the my division, which is the water connection. Next slide. And as I mentioned, the water connection looks a little more holistically at waterway health. So we dabble in water quality as well as supporting a number of different efforts that are engaged in making sure that there's actually water in the waterways, which is absolutely not a guarantee here in Colorado. There's no guarantee there's going to be water in there. So we also focus on the economics of healthy waterways, and we focus heavily on engaging innovators and the business community in doing this some of this work around water resources, because we believe that the challenges facing our state in the realm of water are so significant that really the public sector and the nonprofit sector alone can't address all of these challenges. And so we engage the business community in a number of different ways to help do this work. And in the next slide, you'll see just one of our recent projects that is called Nautilus, and it is an in-stream trash removal device that's installed in Cherry Creek, just downstream from Market. Go check it out. It's super cool. We're piloting this new device to keep trash out of the water. So it's just one of the ways that we're working with a number of different partners to do collaborative water work. And we're excited to be part of this One Water effort because we see it as a step toward a healthier and more sustainable watershed.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ty Boreski, and I'm a senior planner at Denver Water. I also want to just briefly introduce my colleagues who are participating as part of this, Abby Antelovich and Jeff Terrell. So Denver Water is the oldest and largest water utility in Colorado. We provide drinking, recycled, and raw water to over 1.5 million people in the metro area. As an organization, we are always seeking ways to most efficiently use and protect our water supplies. And when it comes to One Water, we want to lead by example. Recently, we've redeveloped our campus, integrating One Water elements such as a decentralized blackwater system, rainwater harvesting, and drought-tolerant, less water-intensive landscaping. We're grateful to be a part of this regional initiative with such great partners. Thank you.
And on the next slide, I think we have Brandy from Metro Wastewater.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Brandy DeLange from Metro Wastewater. So Metro is obviously a really critical part of the water cycle here, and we provide wastewater treatment to over 60 municipalities within our Denver metro area. So that's about 2 million people that are being served. And we really see that the One Water project is really in alignment with our strategic vision, and also us being an innovative leader in the wastewater treatment industry. So we really are very grateful to be a part of this, and we see that this really is a part of the value that the value and collaborative relationships that we have with all of our stakeholders and partners throughout the water cycle.
Thanks, Brandy. And last but not least, Kevin with the Colorado Water Conservation Board.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Reedy. I'm the State Water Conservation Specialist for the Colorado Water Conservation Board. We exist in the Department of Natural Resources, and you can see from our mission statement there, it's to conserve, develop, and protect, manage Colorado's water for present and future generations. And it's kind of interesting, I was thinking about this today, that 1937, when the board was created, conservation meant a very different thing. It really meant creating reservoirs to store water. Well, since then we've changed a lot, and honestly, this project is one of those things that you know we've changed over the years with, and so looking at why One Water matters to us, looking at a significant urban water gap in the future, looking at climate change, looking at drought, aridification. So we're trying to find more innovative and better ways to do this and manage water in a sustainable manner. And so I really focus on urban water efficiency, and that's why this is a really important part of this, because we're trying to integrate water efficiency into land use planning, and to make the best decisions we can, because there's such a direct connection between land use planning and development and water use in Colorado, especially with our climate, that this project is very important, and bringing together a lot of partners that can help create this, because it's not just my agency that can do this, but it's a whole room of partners that can create this One Water vision that we're trying to go after. So I think I'll leave it at that, and I'll take it back to you, Miles. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin, and well said. And I think that's a great note to end on, just the unprecedented nature of this partnership and the organizations you heard from coming together towards this common vision. So quick reminder, if you have questions for any of the organizations, use the chat. We'll get to some Q&A here in just a minute. But first, Dave's going to walk us through a little One Water 101, the history and background of really what this effort is all about. Dave?
Okay. Go to the next. So traditionally, the water resources industry has kind of compartmentalized, siloed the different aspects of water. And then as you can see here from this graphic, a lot of people touch different things. And while we all have all worked together over the years, there's not really a lot of alignment between our goals and strategies. Everybody, has their hands full with what they're responsible for, and have been focused on that. But in these days, we want to take it to the next level and start to work together more closely. A credit to the environmental groups, typically nonprofits, have been looking across the whole thing. They looked at things from a watershed perspective, and not just whether it's stormwater or drinking water or wastewater. Next. So how does One Water look in the Denver metro area, and specifically the city and county of Denver? We talked about all the players. I'll just go around our nice little graphic here. Denver is responsible for stormwater and floodplain management. Primarily, we do, and I mentioned earlier, stormwater and sanitary infrastructure responsibilities, the pipes in the streets that you don't see unless they're backed up. And then Metro Wastewater treats our wastewater, the water that goes down your taps and flushes down your toilet. And then we have Mile High Flood District assists the city and other jurisdictions within the region for stormwater and floodplain management. And Denver Water supplies us our potable water and ensures that we have a sustainable water supply. So these are all the different players that are working together. And then we have people like the Greenway Foundation and the Water Connection that are advocating more regionally and holistically across the area. And so this is how we work in the city. And then one thing that I've learned, and anybody who has been working with One Water concepts and frameworks and the theory in general, is a lot of people have different definitions of One Water. So we did come up with our own. And this gives you an idea of some of the things I'm not going to read to you. But we're really excited to be working together on this historic plan. And with that, I think we're going to get to our first question and polling and Q&A opportunity. Miles?
Awesome, Dave. Thank you so much. And that's a crash course in a really complex, set of projects. So before we get into any Q&A that's come in through chat or through the raised virtual hands, we're going to do a quick live poll just to test how many of you have heard about the One Water concept before this meeting. And you should all be seeing a poll. It's pretty straightforward there. Yes, no, I don't know, maybe. But looks like you guys are fast. You're already at 75% of you who have voted. And I think this is a good opportunity just to take a minute to really give credit to this community. And there's already over 70 people who are participating in this meeting. So really great turnout. Looks like the polling is slowing down. We've got 81% in. And Lexi, if you want to end and share this with everyone, you can see we've got a pretty informed base of community members here too. It's 77% have heard about the One Water concept before this meeting, and 23% of you are unsure. So hopefully some of those 23%, you've got the chat function going and you've got some questions for us. If not, this first Q&A break is one of 5 as a reminder. So don't feel like this is your only opportunity to ask a question, but following this quick poll, let's close that down. And Alex, do we have any questions that have come through in the chat or any requests for a virtual question?
We have not had any questions come through the chat, but I'll give everyone a few seconds now if you'd like to raise your hand to ask a question. I'll keep an eye out for you. All right. I'm seeing none, so we may be able to move on to the next section. Good news is we have a lot of other Q&A sessions coming up, so you're not off the hook yet, anybody.
The first questions are always the hardest, folks. So this was just the end of the crash course. And like Alex said, there's going to be multiple opportunities and we do have a full agenda. So let's keep on moving. And if we go to the next slide, Lexi, we're going to hear from Devin at the Greenway Foundation and Water Connection, who walk us through why this project's needed, why it's so important right now, what the goals and benefits are from this. Devin, what do we have?
Yeah, well, so it looks like some of you already know about One Water, but just for some context, you may be asking, why do we even need a One Water plan? And that's absolutely a valid question. You may be aware that in 2015, we got our first ever state water plan. I think Kevin spoke to that just a little bit. And it projects a shortfall for the state of up to 560,000 acre feet of water by the year 2050. So an acre foot of water is the amount of water required to support 2.5 million Coloradans per year. So that's a lot of water we need to find somehow. But just for a little context, the South Platte Basin is home to 80% of the state's population and provides 80% of the state's economic and tax base. By 2050, the population in our basin, the South Platte Basin, is going to increase from approximately 3.8 million to 6 million. So that's a big jump. And our basin is challenged with the greatest projected supply gap of any of Colorado's river basins and has the state's largest population. So, obviously we need to start paying attention to how we're going to provide water for all these folks. And along with this growth, we're experiencing increasing climate change risks, some of which are particularly apparent this week as the state continues to burn in wildfires. You can see in this graphic a pretty dramatic illustration of what's going on here. 100% of the state is in a state of drought this year. So what we're experiencing, this is what we're really experiencing on the ground. And in 2020, you can see the graphic on the right, represent the red slice of the color wheel is just 1 year. So not only have we had one of the largest wildfires in the state's history, we've actually had two of the state's largest wildfires in our history. And so this speaks to why we need to start paying closer attention to the connection between caring for our watersheds and our water supply. So next slide. We put together a list of some One Water goals, and these are just, for context. This isn't necessarily as they're going to appear in the plan. But one of the things we're trying to accomplish is to elevate water's visibility and standing relative to other critical resource areas. Water sometimes is sort of invisible, and as long as it functions, then nobody really talks about it or thinks about it. So we're trying to let's elevate the conversation around water and watersheds. We also feel it's important to reduce negative impacts from decisions made in silos, as Dave mentioned. We intend to strengthen relationships for holistic and multi-benefit solutions to water challenges. And this is a great opportunity with all of these different organizations coming together. We can talk about pivoting from business as usual. And so it's no longer okay to just say, well, we're going to do it this way because that's how we've always done it. So we're really going to push the envelope a little bit here and challenge each other to think a little differently and perhaps think as if there is no box in the room. So we also want to support each other and support opportunities for a water resilient future. And through all of that, a goal would be to improve urban livability, equity, and social justice. Because after all, water is not only fundamental, water really is life. So the next slide shows you some other components that are typically categorized as One Water categories. This all fits under the umbrella of One Water, if you will. It includes agency coordination, predictable land use and water planning regulations. So sort of integrating those two, or at least making them coordinate better. Supporting economic development and smart growth. And collaboration is a key word in all of this work, environmental stewardship, and having a unified vision. So those are some of the main components. But, in my view, it's really about the connectivity piece is the distinguishing characteristic of One Water versus just talking about water management or a water project per se. So in other words, One Water takes a holistic view of water and emphasizes that interconnected nature of the water system and the water related infrastructure. And that really is what's different. It emphasizes the connection points and opportunities for multiple benefits. So what we're going to be doing is striving for an exponentially greater outcomes through integration and alignment. And I know that's a lot of words, but it comes down to really paying attention to allowing for the emergence of some new ideas and practices related to how we build and rebuild our city. So now, speaking of city, I'll hand it back to Dave Jula with the city.
Okay. Go ahead, Alex. So traditionally, at the city, we're really good at focusing on the gray infrastructure. And from a water perspective, that meant pipes, big pipes to convey stormwater from our neighborhoods to our waterways. However, in the last few years, we've really shifted that focus to look more holistically at our projects and work with the community, understand what their needs are, listen to what their wants are in their neighborhood, and also looking for opportunities to introduce green infrastructure to improve water quality, and not just try to manage the big storm events. And all those things result in those multi-benefits to the community that we've all been talking about here. And so this is really the new way of us approaching work. So how do you specifically fit into this process? You know, we have our core planning team who you've met. We have to brief our executive leadership at our respective agencies. We also have an advisory group, the One Water Advisory Group, that's made up of industry experts across the board to help us vet some of our ideas and identify challenges early on and potential solutions. But then this is your opportunity to engage with us and hear from you on what you want to see in a One Water plan moving forward. Next. And this is the first touch point we're having with you. So we're doing a lot of introductory here on what we're doing and the concepts, but we are going to be coming back to you more times, as you can see there, in later next month and early next year as we complete the plan in hopefully by March of next year. Good. Okay, so where is this plan going? Many of you probably are familiar with the Denver Right suite of plans that were updated last year, the Denver Right overall comprehensive plan. And then as you see here in this graphic, we have individual plans for all of these different aspects of our city. You know, Parks has game plan, Transit has Denver Moves. And then we have ones focused on land use and transportation and pedestrian and trail use. But we don't have a water plan. So this is what we see as being one of the legs to the Denver Right suite of plans. Okay. And now I'm going to hand it back to Miles to work our next question.
Thanks, Dave. That's a really good summary on kind of where we've been, where we are, where we're going, and that this is really just one of the first opportunities to get your feedback on what's important. Where does the community see opportunities? Where does the community see challenges? And what questions do you have? So with that, Alex, I know you put it out there on chat. Any questions coming in yet?
No questions that have come in via chat, and I'm going to take a quick look. I don't see any hands raised yet.
Perfect. And we'll give you all just a couple more minutes if you have any other chats. And the quick reminder is this is discussion zone number 2 of 5. And I'm sure you all are kind of holding your questions for the end. We'll have a final thought and Q&A at the end as well. And you probably want to get to the really fun stuff on how do we make this real? And what does a good One Water project look like? What are the criteria that make a project a candidate? And what does that mean for the community and you all at the neighborhood level or even the citywide level, the state or the regional level? So with that, unless Alex, I've killed enough time to get some questions.
We did get some questions in.
Okay. Yeah, just quiet that guy up.
Yeah. All right, so we one question is from Christy Wiseman asking, how is equity being integrated into Denver's One Water planning process? The pandemic has highlighted longstanding inequities in access to affordable, reliable, safe drinking water and in underserved communities not being prioritized for green infrastructure projects. So I think the key question here is how is equity being integrated into Denver One Water's planning process?
Yeah, Christy, that's a great question. And thank you for breaking the seal on our community Q&A tonight. So I mean, equity component is obviously now more than ever a huge piece of everything that we do as a community collectively. And it's big work, and it's work that takes all of us. And Dave, I know the city has prioritized equity as one of the key criteria that it looks at as it identifies projects. So maybe you have some color you want to add there. And I think the only thing I would add too is it gets back to the point Devin made earlier, is that water is fundamental to life, and it's a fundamental human need. And that's really what this project is all about, is making sure when we look at the statewide drought and some of those scary numbers about the water shortage that's projected for the future, that we're thinking proactively to make sure that everyone has access to fresh, clean, safe drinking water. And then that's why this coalition of partners is so important. So with that, Dave, I'll flip it to you for any comments you'd like to make from the city's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Christy. It's a good one. And as Miles mentioned, everything we're doing at the city, we're looking through the lens of equity and safety and the benefits of everyone within our city. But specifically how we're doing on this one is we have representatives from Host and the department in the city that is focused on equity. We're advising us on this. We also are looking at the prioritization of our projects and better ways to include equity within those. It already was a component of our prioritization, but we're looking at, is it the right level, and is it the right mix, and we need to enhance that. As we progress through this, our goals and objectives, our goals and strategies that we've already come up with specifically call out equity within them. So we are looking at every way possible that we can integrate that into the plan.
Excellent, Dave. Thank you so much for that. And because this is such an important question, the equity piece, I want to open it up to our full core planning team. If any others want to chime in on kind of why this equity piece is really critical, I want to make sure we hear from everybody.
And some additional context from the question too. There was a lot of good information there. But another specific question in this piece was, particularly, is the planning team looking to adopt any best practices from other states or compiled from national groups? And they reference a policy innovations to secure drinking water for all report that was published by the U.S. Water Alliance. So it seems like there's some good recommendations in here, but are there any other best practices from other states that we're looking to incorporate in this process?
Thanks, Alex. That's an important additional sub-question there too. So opening it back up to the CPT for any additional comments there. And I think we've got John and Inga too, who are involved in some of the best practices for One Water LA. So maybe you might want to chime in a little bit on lessons learned, best practices, and how we address some of those national lessons learned to make sure that we're innovative and at the tip of the spear as we think about how we implement this going forward in Denver.
And quickly, I will add that the U.S. Water Alliance, we have reached out to them to be a part of that advisory group that we have, and Water Research Foundation, of course. So yes, the answer is yes, but yeah, I'd love to hear from maybe Inga on the broader specifics.
Sure. Hi, this is Inga Wiersma. I'm a control engineer as part of the core planning team, helping develop this plan and bringing some very unique and practical experience from having led the One Water LA 2040 plan. That was a 3-year effort from 2015 to 2018, as well as some other efforts in California. And we're working with the Water Research Foundation and One Water Metrics. So we're bringing a lot of these best practices that are happening around the country, as well as our working with the U.S. Water Alliance to the table for this project. Specifically, when it comes to, for example, equity, we're currently working at identifying some One Water project opportunities. And just like what we did in LA, we used opportunities to enhance water equity as one of the criteria to elevate project opportunities where equity is a key component of those projects to help prioritize, as Dave was saying. We're also bringing just lessons learned in terms of how do you get from gathering a lot of ideas to developing policies. So we have some sort of processes that we went through in LA and other places that we're bringing to the table here and discuss with the planning team, but then really customize it to what's needed for this project and for challenges that are specific to the Denver area. So whether it's taking evaluation criteria and modifying those, or how do you develop policies? And there's a specific focus here on land use versus water connection. All those experiences are integrated in the project. So it's very exciting.
Excellent, Inga. Thank you so much. And I think we've got a couple. Oh, sorry. Did we have another core planning team member? Got it. Sorry, I was getting some echo for a second there. Alex, I think we've got a couple more questions.
Yep. So we have another one from Jocelyn Johnson, and she's asking, has the team identified the most pressing water challenges such as the top 4 or 5 items facing the city and the community?
Great question, Jocelyn. And short answer is yes. But the longer answer is that's also what this meeting is about. And you'll see towards the end of the meeting, we want to hear from you on where you see opportunities, where you see challenges. But you know, Dave and Barb and Devin as kind of the core planning team members, I know you flagged some challenges. Dave, you want to start off with kind of where you see the big hurdles?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really narrowed them down to exactly 5 yet. There's a lot. You know, I'll speak from the city's perspective. The massive growth and development pressures putting on our open waterways, especially along the river, is one of our big challenges. Having stormwater infrastructure needs that outweigh our resources is another major obstacle for us. And those are probably our 2 big ones. And I'll, you know, who wants to go next?
Well, this is Devin. I would just echo what Dave just said, and the increasing pressures on the valuable resources we have, the South Platte River and all of the tributaries and the trails that run adjacent. I mean, those are true amenities, and the increasing population pressures in those areas continue to demand investment. I mean, and there is no we're finished in this kind of work. Like, you know, tremendous progress has been made over the years, but it's essential to find continued energy and continued funding to maintain, not just maintain what we have, but keep up with the increasing demands and development from just being a really popular place to be. You know, nothing wrong with that, but we need to maintain the infrastructure accordingly. And I would say there's water quality perspective, you know, again, it goes hand in hand with that increasing use and increasing popularity. Really, with the more people and animals we have in these places, the more attention we need to continue to pay to keeping that water quality adequate, so that we can enjoy the actual water that's in the waterways, assuming there is some. And then that's the other challenge that I would put at the top of the list, is making sure there actually is water in the waterways, so we can continue to call them waterways. And when that's the beauty of this one water approach, though, is looking at how can we make the best use of the water system in a way that doesn't pull water out, continue to pull water out of the waterways, or continue to divert the water from flowing back into the waterway. So one water approaches these things, and we can't solve one problem on the back of another, if that makes sense. You know, it's not okay to say, well, we're going to maximize the use of this water over and over and over, but not have any water returning to the natural waterways. So this is an opportunity to look at the system as a whole, which is kind of the beauty of the one water concept.
Thanks, Devin. And I know we've got at least one more question. So any other comments on that one from the core planning team organizations? And hearing none, Alex, we have more, right?
Miles, I did just want to add, I mean, you know, we're not just looking at water quality in the waterways and the pipes. We're also talking about reuse and conservation. And so it's everything. We have challenges on all of those because there's a ton, as Devin pointed out, there's a ton of work to be done and only so many resources. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew we were looking holistically at those.
That's a great point, Dave.
Maybe, Miles, I have one more thing to add. In addition to looking at the whole water cycle when it comes to water conservation and reuse and stormwater, it's also, the plan is very heavily focused on institutional collaboration. So to really make it happen and to take a one water approach, it's really bringing all these partners together. So just by the process of doing this plan, just like what was done in LA, relationships are built. People get to understand each other's perspectives better and find avenues about where does there need to be more coordination to align projects and be early enough to incorporate changes and ideas. And that's part of why we're having the meeting today, to get ideas from everybody, and that can be integrated and considered in the plan. And so the whole institutional collaboration piece is really key to One Water, in addition just to the technical solutions of the different elements of the water cycle and how to use water most wisely and achieve healthy watersheds. And that's a big part of why this core planning team is pretty unique as an effort.
Excellent point. All about the collaboration there. Alex, what do we have next?
Sure. So our next question is from David Riordan. Apologies if I mispronounced that, from the Colorado River Surfing Association. And so his question is what's the plan to allow the voice of water recreation users within the Denver One Water plan? And so he specifically mentions surfers or fishermen or women that are on the edge of the waters and how they're being included.
Yeah, great question. And that's such an important piece of it too, as we think about One Water. And you'll hear in a minute with the National Western Center, how some of the riverbanks are brought back into the community and providing that access. Not only is water essential for drinking and for life, and it's just so crucial to our everyday functions that we often don't think about, but it's a huge part of quality of life and of recreation. And by bringing trails into the greenways, by improving the environmental conditions along the rivers and the water quality in those rivers, it brings in that access component, and to do it equitably is critically important. So to throw it back to the core planning team for any additional, Dave, I don't know if you want to lead us off, but I think hearing from all stakeholders during these meetings, and we have an upcoming community survey where we'll be talking specifically about what are the benefits and how can we make sure that those benefits are equitably addressed and considered throughout the planning process, and recreation is a huge part of it.
Yeah, I think that's the point, Miles, is that we understand this is in an urban environment. We're not, living in some kind of fantasy land that we're going to turn back the clock and restore the South Platte River to its pre-Denver glory, right? But we understand that we need to provide those opportunities for people to interact with the river. I mean, we've come such a long way since the river was literally the open sewer for the city over the last few decades, with a big credit to the Greenway Foundation for leading that charge in the High Flood District, along with the city. So we need to continue that trend of revitalizing as well as restoring our waterways.
And this is Devin, and thank you, Dave, for the kudos for the Greenway Foundation. Much appreciated. And I would just say, feel free to reach out to me or anybody else on the staff at the Greenway Foundation with your comments regarding recreational use of the waterways. I would be happy to talk with you at any time and carry any ideas you have forward, or we certainly hope you participate in the survey that's going to go out as well. So my contact information is easy to find on the Greenway Foundation website, but it's devin@thewaterconnection.org.
Excellent. Thanks, Devin. And you can also get in touch with the full CPT through the project email address, which is onewater@denvergov.org. So for more information on some of those critical, big, complex issues like how do we integrate recreation effectively, please do reach out and we'll keep the conversation going that way. We're a little bit over time into getting to our next agenda item. So Alex, do we have any other questions before we move on?
No, I think we hit them, and I'm going to send that email address out in the chat. So it's onewater@denvergov.org, correct?
That's correct. Yep. And we'll have it on our closing slide too, but thanks for putting it out in the chat, Alex. That's great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, moving on, and as a reminder, we've got 3 more discussion zones going, so we've clearly got the dialogue moving, and we look forward to keeping the energy moving on that. Let's quickly transition into what makes a good One Water project. What does this look like in real life? And to give us a good overview on that before we get into the mini case study from National Western, we've got Barbara with Mile High Flood District to talk us through what makes a good One Water project. Barb?
Thank you, Miles. So we've been talking some concepts related to One Water, but I know that it helps for all of us to have the same picture of maybe what One Water means to all of us. And so hopefully from this next few slides, you'll walk away with better pictures in your individual heads on what One Water might look like. So as you look at this environment, I might ask you the question of what's different between this natural environment shown here and the built environment here shown on the next slide. And I think if you look at the two, they're so starkly different that I'm asking you similarities, right? Well, that's a pretty tough question to answer? Well, let me give you the answer in that I think what I draw from both photos is, or both environment is, that both are still a magnet for people, right? I think you could agree that you could see people using both spaces the same way. Both settings or both environments still moves water, especially during rain events, to protect people. And you can see that water moves through both river corridors to provide water for drinking, for irrigation, and for play. And I think as we've heard in the past discussion, all of those objectives or those benefits are important to all of us. But I might ask the question on the next slide, which is, what's the difference? And I think it's easier to identify the difference between kind of a natural environment shown on the left and the built environment, and I think the biggest difference between both of them is just the amount of, the gray spaces, the amount of paving that's in between the two. And I think if you move to the next slide, I think it illustrates that we experience this every day. All of us here have seen the changes of these green spaces into gray spaces, whether it's in the neighborhood that we live in or that we work in. Here is the Denver Tech Center in 1937, and you could probably imagine there's probably cottonwood trees that dotted these blue lines, which represent the dry gulches, and a lot of prairie grasses that lined the areas in between. Well, today you see a lot of gray spaces, a lot of buildings, a lot of driveways, a lot of houses, and not so many green spaces, right? Well, you take another area that is in the metro area shown in this next slide in 1937, and it's very similar to the Denver Tech Center. So you've gone and keep going to the next slide, and you'll see that there's a slight difference in how this developed. And this is what it looks like today, and you can move on to the next slide to give you eyes on the ground of what it looks like. And you can see here that there was a deliberate effort with development actually embracing these green spaces. This is an example of what makes a good One Water project. It works for development and it works for everything else that we've been talking about all along. Next slide, please. And these really minor changes, they're really simple changes like adding green spaces back in or vegetation, even simply with a parking lot, has a huge impact on its use, on its benefit to us, on its use, on its benefit to wildlife. And we might even challenge ourselves to incorporate these simple changes, as you can see here on the next slide, to a larger scale, a city scale of, say, Denver. And here we're looking at the South Platte River at Commons Park with Denver in the background. And, as a flood district, I might say, I'm just going to take the South Platte River and I'm going to, fix the South Platte River so that floodwaters are contained to the river, right? So that we can protect people. But as a good One Water project, why don't we take this opportunity to incorporate good vegetation, good topography in the overbank area so that we now have space for people, but we also have spaces for wildlife and for vegetation. But why not we take it one more step as a good One Water project and use the space to also cleanse that water that's running from the streets and the buildings before it gets into the river. And as a good One Water project, guess what? That water is irrigation for farmers downstream and for our communities downstream. And so by us cleaning the water here, it makes that water cleaner for those as a drinking water supply. And so all of that is what makes a good One Water project. Miles?
Barb, thank you so much. That's a great overview. And it's really striking to see that, it is all One Water and it's all connected. And when you do it right, it's a new way of thinking about how we develop, how we create infrastructure that benefits the environment, recreational users, but also urban livability, and kind of brings that back into play. And one of the projects that really exemplifies that here in Denver, if we go on to the next section, Lexi, we'll be taking a look at National Western Center. And so from National Western, we have Brad Buchanan and Barb Frommel to walk us through what they're doing at National Western in a mini case study, and then we'll have some good Q&A after. And Brad, you should be able to unmute yourself, and Barb.
Thanks, Miles. Thanks, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you and talk about what's been a really incredible journey to get where we are, and we haven't actually built it yet, so we still have some journey to go. But this came, the National Western Center has been a project that's been, from the National Western Stock Show and trying to save the National Western Stock Show to rethinking about what a revisioned campus might look like in that location. I think from a One Water perspective, it's fascinating to think why it's where it is, and it was very intentional. The National Western is there because that's where the stockyards were and the packing plants and the slaughterhouses, and the reason they were situated there was that was downstream from town. When you think about where Denver started, and they put their slaughter facilities downstream. They used the river as a way to, move waste away from the packing plants and the slaughterhouses. And then the rail came in, the smelter plants came in, an incredibly diverse and rich neighborhood formed around those uses. Lots of immigrant labor coming to this part of the country to work at this, where industry was. If you look at some of the old graphics from, the late 1800s, the graphics that we used to sell Denver included huge smokestacks with billowing plumes of black smoke, moving from them along the Platte River, because that was a sign of progress. Industry was here, and it was right there in that location. Well, now thinking, with what we know now about the impacts of all those moves, from socially and culturally, and from those neighborhoods and those communities that were really abused over the last 150 years from the indigenous populations that were there in the first place, to the natural resources, the river's edge, the water itself, the riparian habitat around the Platte River. And so now we're here to see, how can we repair that, and what can we use of those resources. So one of the major issues that we had was that along the river's edge was the Delgany Interceptor, and Barb Fromm will go into what we did with that, and how we looked at the river's edge, and how the team of a whole bunch of agencies and institutions worked together to trade what was a huge challenge in literally physically getting to the river's edge into a huge asset for the campus. And we think as an incredible exemplar nationally and internationally around using what has been seen before as a wasted resource into an incredible energy asset on the campus. Barb's with us, and she's the expert, and really, helped lead this project it's been an incredible path, and not an easy one. It's to try to do something that really at this scale has never been done before, at least in North America, and potentially we're aware of anywhere on the planet. And Barb and Megan Sivikoff from the National Western Center Authority led this project. Barb was there from the very, very beginning. And I guess I would add, to close on a hopeful note and let the expert talk. This project took such a collaboration of so many major agencies and institutions, as City and County of Denver, Colorado State University, Western Stock Association, along with Metro Wastewater, and a host of others from the city and other state and federal regulatory agencies. This has been just an amazing success story so far. And so I'll let Barb explain more about how it works, and we're here to answer any questions you have. Thanks.
Great, Brad. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Barb Frommel. I'm with the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center, and we are the City and County of Denver office that's responsible for the design and construction of the National Western Center campus. And Brad is giving me way too much credit. I'm not the expert in this, especially from a One Water perspective. We were very much inspired to go through this process by our partners that he mentioned, Colorado State University, Metro Wastewater, Denver Water, the Greenway Foundation, and of course the community, which during the master plan for the National Western Center really challenged us to think about development of this campus differently and to embrace an ethic of regeneration at this campus and make sure that we're connecting people to the river and to nature. So when we started the One Water process, I was very new to One Water. I think a lot of us were, and I thought it would be a very analytical process of identifying different water uses on the site and different sources for that. And of course, we went through that, but it turns out there's a lot more at play here, such as all the policies and regulations surrounding water uses, which really frame what you are allowed to do and not do with water. Of course, we have a lot of site constraints and opportunities at the National Western Center that we had to take into consideration. We looked at a lot of different opportunities to build in efficiencies and green infrastructure, as well as partnership opportunities and what we call co-benefits, win-win situations that made sense for the campus, but also for the environment and for the surrounding region. And then future-proofing, how do we deliver this campus in a way that enables us to build on our successes over time and offer even more from a One Water perspective. So I'll try to go through these slides quickly. So next slide. Early on in the process, and this is, I think Dave Julot was getting to this, we were challenged to not think about water systems in silos, but rather as an integrated living system. And this process really allowed us to identify opportunities that we otherwise wouldn't have identified. So it was a very worthwhile process. Next slide. As Brad mentioned, we have extremely challenging conditions at the National Western Center. I'd say that's probably an understatement. This is one example of those, and it is the Delgany Interceptor, which is a twin set of wastewater pipes that sit above ground or at grade. These pipes, it's hard to tell from this picture, but these pipes are 7 feet tall. And what you have here is you are looking north on the campus. The South Platte River is to the west, so to the left, just on the other side of those trees and on the other side of some very steep banks. And to the east, to the right, is the National Western Center campus, 250 acres. And so we were challenged by our partners, and I'm gonna call out John Zappian, specifically a longtime Globeville resident and National Western Center Authority board member who challenged us to turn our liabilities into assets. And so this is a great story and a great example of how we've been able to do that. Next slide. So first and foremost, the One Water process is about collaboration. This is a snapshot of all the folks we've collaborated with on this, and really couldn't be where we are today without the technical expertise and sometimes resources from these partners to bring this vision to a reality. So thank you to all these partners. I'm realizing right now I'm missing CDPHE, so I'm sure I'm missing others as well, but this is the kind of thing that you can't do yourself. It requires collaboration. And so that's been a really fun part of the process. Next slide. The other piece that contributed to our One Water process was analysis. And there was a lot of work that went into collaborating on data and projections, such as water demand projections. CSU and Denver Water did a lot of this work, and we've been very appreciative of that. And it allowed us to really look at the realities of delivering some of the different solutions to the campus and look at patterns in the data that would help us hone in on what the right solutions are. Next slide. Our capital build program has a performance management framework, which outlines goals and strategies and KPIs for the entire capital build of the campus. As it relates to One Water, the overarching strategy is creating an inspiring One Water district. And then the two main goals that came out of this process were to deliver the natural system, the right water at the right time, and then reduce overall water consumption, and specifically related to potable water, so minimizing potable water use. We looked at a lot of different strategies for how to achieve these goals on the campus, and this, again, is a snapshot of what we looked at. There are probably more that I'm missing, but things like removing that industrial infrastructure away from the river, laying back the banks, creating an open space buffer, but also on the water conservation side, looking at water efficient irrigation, xeriscape and drought tolerant plantings, but also really big ideas such as district heating and cooling. And so I'm going to kind of focus on two areas where I think we've been really successful, and that is the district heating and cooling and the greenway along the riverfront. So district heating and cooling is a different way of heating and cooling your buildings. So typically you would, each building would have its heating and cooling sort of as an individual structure, and the source of that would be natural gas. With district heating and cooling, you take this much more efficient approach where you consolidate all of the equipment or most of the equipment into a central utility plant. We are going to source our heating and cooling from the thermal energy that is in the wastewater in the Delgany pipeline. And so this has tremendous energy benefits, which we talk about a lot in terms of greenhouse gas reductions on the campus. But what we don't get to talk about a lot is the water benefits, and they are pretty phenomenal. So one of those is that by reducing the temperature of the water in the Delgany, of the wastewater in the Delgany pipeline, we are able to help Metro Wastewater reduce the temperature of their wastewater effluent that goes into the South Platte River. And so simply by heating and cooling our buildings in this way, we can have ecosystem benefits on the South Platte River, which is a connection you wouldn't normally be able to make. Next slide. The other thing the district energy system does is allow us to conserve water or minimize that water usage on the campus. The way this works is that in traditional heating and cooling, every building would have its own cooling towers. And the cooling towers are in commercial and industrial buildings, they consume 20 to 30% of the facility's total water use, and they happen to be the largest use of water in commercial and industrial buildings, which is largely what we have on the campus. In district heating and cooling, those cooling towers are not located in the buildings, they're centralized in the central utility plant, and it's a much more efficient way to heat and cool those buildings. We need fewer cooling towers, and we have significant water savings. And on the next slide, we've calculated what that water savings is. It's over 3,000 kilogallons per year, which is the equivalent to 5 Olympic-sized swimming pools each year, simply by having a district energy approach to heating and cooling our buildings. So we're pretty excited about that. With the riverfront, of course, one of our first challenges was figuring out a way to relocate that industrial infrastructure. So we have not only those Delgany pipes, but also freight rail lines. And we've been able to work with Metro Wastewater, who's a really important partner in this project, to relocate and bury the Delgany pipes away from the river's edge. And additionally, we've been able to relocate the freight rail. So what this allows for is space, about 6 acres of space along the river. And this is about a half-mile stretch of the South Platte River, where we can lay back the banks, widen the floodplain, and offer both water benefits in terms of cleansing the water and slowing down the water before it enters the river, but also recreational opportunities. And then in the design of this open space, we challenged our design teams to bring in as much green infrastructure as possible and enough, as much sort of one water elements as possible. And so they've been able to put in water efficient irrigation, drought tolerant landscaping, things like alternative turf, pollinator lawns, things like that, which both have, again, ecosystem benefits, but also recreational benefits for surrounding communities and visitors. And I think the last couple of slides I have here are just some renderings of what the campus will look like when it's completed. A couple years away now, but if you go out to the site, you'll see the construction is underway. It's happening, and we're really excited to see these changes in place. So this is a couple of shots of what this new riverfront will look like once we have these amenities built. And I think the last slide here is just how you can follow the National Western Center and stay in touch with us.
Barb and Brad, that's great. You just summarized so much information in such a short time. I'm sure we've got lots of good Q&A, and what really sticks out in my mind is when you can turn those essential infrastructure assets into true community assets. It blows my mind that 90% of the heating and cooling come from the interceptor, the sewer interceptor that run through there. It's amazing. So with that, Alex, what questions did we get from the community during that mini case study on One Water here in Denver at National Western Center?
So the first question that's come in is asking if a recording of this event will be posted or available.
Awesome. And Brad and Barb, I think your presentation was so captivating. People want to rewatch the tape, and we are recording. So it will be available. We're going to put it up on the project website. We can put the project website in chat and we'll email it around. So great question. Yeah, we want to document this for folks who couldn't be here and hear the discussion. We'll absolutely have a recording that goes up on the website. Alex, any other questions?
That's it. That's come in via chat, and I can see if anybody would like to ask a question live, they can raise their hand, but I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
Sounds good. Well, it
just
seems
got
like
one more in chat. Sorry.
No, perfect.
We always give ourselves
great.
just enough time. So this is from Josh Phillips, and he's commenting that this is what a great project. And he's asking, does the city offer incentives to encourage green infrastructure and other One Water solutions in new development projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Barb, I don't know if you have any sort of tangible examples from the previous effort that you just went through, but maybe this is a good opportunity to loop back to Dave too and kind of talk about how things exist, and Sarah at Community Planning and Development may have some insights to share here too. So let's kind of open it up to the broader group. Dave, do you want to lead us off?
Yeah, just that we definitely recognize that people aren't going to do that type of thing, and green infrastructure is expensive, and they're not going to do it just out of their goodness of their heart. And so we are looking at considering that as recommendations to come out of the plan to create an incentive program for doing things like that, not only in green infrastructure, but across water use and reuse. Barb, you got more?
Is that Barb me? Yeah. I think what we've done at National Western. I'm sorry, there are two Barbs, which is really rare. So we have a number of design teams that are designing different aspects of the campus. And so what we've done is, at least for the city portions of the project, is have design teams, we challenge them to incorporate green infrastructure by completing due diligence. And we have something called the Green Infrastructure Checklist. And so it's really a process that the design teams have to go through that identify different drainage conditions, or how are they maximizing flows to green infrastructure features, what planting facilities. And so they have to sort of go through this checklist, and if they're not incorporating these elements, they have to respond why they're not incorporating them. Is it because there's a regulation in the way, or is it because the budget doesn't allow for it, or things like that? So that has been a useful tool. It's not necessarily an incentive, but it's a tool that they go through and a process that they go through that explains how they're able to feature these things in the design process.
I would add on, and while it isn't necessarily, an incentive from the city, but and Barb didn't really go into the details of the sort of the financing piece of it, but at the end of the day, and we looked at it over total cost of ownership over 40 years, we were less than 10% premium for the total cost of ownership over 40 years. And this infrastructure has a longer lifespan than that. And if the geography or the gross square footage that will be served in terms of heating and cooling by the ambient loop and the central utility plant off of the Delgany interceptor, the heat exchanger, the efficiency increases, so you get some even more economy of scale. And so one, by having this infrastructure last longer than 40 years, which it will, and two, expanding the area that this system serves, which it could, both of those things could serve to actually have the total cost of this infrastructure be less than what I'll call a conventional heating and cooling system sourced by natural gas and electricity. Obviously, there are other renewables that could be come into play with that, but compared to just a commercially available system, there's a real financial, I think, if you're taking the long-term view, a real financial incentive to this solution that I think will get significant attention nationally and internationally. And I guess what I would say is that, folks might think that being next to two 72-inch sanitary sewer lines running along the, most valuable geographic asset in the form of the Platte River might be a downside to a project. Turns out that that's an upside. So we think we're going to actually have a positive influence on real estate that happens to be adjacent to large sanitary sewer lines, which in the past maybe not have been the case. So there you go. Go out and buy real estate next to large sanitary sewer lines because it's on the upswing. That's what I'm here to tell you.
So, and
first.
Miles, if I can just say one quick thing. So I think it's important to remember too, when you're talking about costs and benefits of green versus gray, that green infrastructure does offer benefits that you can't achieve through gray infrastructure. So when evaluating the costs and benefits, it's not apples and apples really, and we need to just keep that in mind. But also, let's take advantage of this as a community outreach meeting, and I would love to hear from anyone on the call your ideas for what kind of incentives you think might be effective or acceptable or potentially adoptable to be incorporated into this One Water plan. I mean, I would really love to hear from people, even if it's not right now, but connect with us, through email or through the website or however, give us a call if you come up with ideas for what kind of incentives you think might work here in Denver.
That's a great point, Devin. And it's really, you got to take the long view and think about the environmental and the urban livability benefits all together holistically. So I think that's a great transition to, I see we at least have one more question with a hand up.
So we may have one with a hand up. We also have received one via chat. So let me see. Do you have the participant name that has their hand up? I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, I see Caleb Zanet is popping up with a hand up on my screen. Maybe it's the same chat.
Yep, this is Caleb Zanet. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we've got you, Caleb.
Great. Hey, thanks so much for, again, putting this together. Figured this would be a good time to piggyback off that last question. So is One Water, and if so, where has One Water really bridged that gap between developer and utility in supporting conservation programs. And I think more specifically, what I'm asking is where have you seen maybe the most success? I know, Miles, you stated that really we can support all of these conservation programs and try to implement them, but at the end of the day, if it's not going to be efficacious for the developer, what's the incentive to do so? I know Denver Water has their efficiency pilot program. There's the Green Building Code, which reduces permitting times as well as permitting fees. I think one of the best incentives that I've seen so far has just been in Aurora Water saying that you can come up with a domestic service agreement that says I'll use X amount of water and you pay for that water that you use. So you come up with your allocation yourself on a volumetric basis. So just wanted to put that out there and see what you guys have experienced and what has been the most successful in terms of supporting conservation.
Yeah, Caleb, that's a great question. And really what we're trying to do here too during this part of the discussion is really make it real and look at what are those opportunities. And I think, what we just heard from National Western and Brad's example of being located adjacent to a sanitary sewer interceptor can actually have multiple benefits, when it comes to green infrastructure that could actually pay for itself over time, producing that much energy that's used on site. But I want to flip it to Sarah Course. I think maybe if there's any good examples from community planning and development that you would like to share, or any of the other core planning team members that may have insights, including Inga, may have some from One Water LA. They're a bit ahead of us in terms of the life cycle of their One Water efforts. So as they look at implementation, perhaps there's some good lessons learned from our downstream friends in Los Angeles. So Sarah, hopefully I gave you enough of a warning if you've got any examples you'd like to say.
Hi. So yeah, I don't necessarily have any, great examples for the city of Denver at the moment. I'd say, a lot of the development and things that are written in our plans is, with hopes and encouraging people to, address the water or kind of do the right thing. I'm always kind of going back. I think we bring up green infrastructure a lot and looking at that within development. But I know there's a lot of other experts on the call, at least with Dave Jewell and some others that are addressing more of the water within the right of way. And we're, I think, definitely looking for ideas of how can we better address water within the development and then work together, in terms of all our organizations right now, work together to figure out kind of what is that going to look like in terms of better conservation.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. That's really good context for it. And I think it sort of speaks to the importance of being forward thinking and the potential for public-private partnerships. And I see John has his camera on, so I'm going to cede the floor to him.
I do, yeah. This is John Rearing. So one of the great things that we're doing with this project is we've developed 5 key goals for One Water management in Denver, and then 25 strategies to help us implement those goals. And then the next step we're taking, and we're in the middle of that now, is to try and match those strategies up with real world implementation, for example, through project review processes at the City and County of Denver. And so trying to match up where our strategies already have a link to implementation processes, and where they don't, then we're going to flag that as a gap and something to work on and lay out a plan for resolving those gaps. So things like incentives may be part of that in terms of helping us achieve those and filling the gaps that maybe aren't going to help us get there right now, but things we can identify as things to work on.
Excellent, John. That's really good context and kind of framing it up. Alex, do we have any other questions? I know we're running a little bit long, but these are great questions.
We do have one more question. And so this is back to Barb and Brad. And so it's Karen Hancock is asking, the graphics or the renderings show very green, grassy areas. Will there actually be grass in those areas, or will it be something that's climate appropriate / low water?
I can answer that. So the grasses in the riverfront open space, it'll be a mixture of, I'm trying to get this right. There will be some pollinator lawns, and I think our designers have really tried to look for alternative turf to really meet the water efficient irrigation goals that we have. So what we did was we set the the irrigation standards, and then the designers designed to those standards. And for the most part, those standards do not allow regular turf. I think we have one area where there's sort of a passive lawn, but for the rest of the open space, it will be these alternative turfs. So combination of pollinator lawns and native seed areas is really, so it really will look more native than what you might expect from a typical park.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Barb. I think that's a great answer to that question. And Alex, unless we have any others to keep us on time here tonight, I'm going to move us into the next phase.
That's all we have.
Excellent. So with that, Steve Coffin on our planning team is going to walk us through what to expect as we get ready to launch our citywide community survey. Steve.
Terrific. Thank you, Miles. Next slide, please. So I hope you have a good sense of just how exciting this project and this effort is and how meaningful it can be for the community. Community input is very, very important. And actually this dialogue tonight has been also very insightful to some of the issues we need to be thinking about. So thank you for those questions. We're going to go out with a community-wide survey. It's going to go out in just another few weeks, another couple of weeks, mid-November. It's going to be out, excuse me, through January 2021. And it's going to be promoted through our project website, through the core planning team members, and through our community and business partners as well. I would encourage you all to, hope you'll all get that. I'm sure you will, given that you are involved with at least one of these areas. You to fill it out. It's very important for us to get community input on this, so we can understand the community's awareness, understanding of this concept, where the community sees opportunities, where they see challenges, and it'll help us kind of refine the goals and outcomes for this. And so we're going to toss to you a couple of sample questions from the survey now. Ask you to complete those, and we're going to do the tee those up in 1 second. Here we go. But these are just a couple examples of the kinds of things we're thinking about, and your and this discussion is going to help us refine this survey, this discussion tonight. So, first question: what potential One Water benefits excite you the most? We're already getting people to fill it out. You can see environmental and water quality benefits, conservation, more sustainable growth and land use policy, a tool for addressing climate change, improved collaboration between agencies or other. So we are at 37%. We're going to give it another minute or two, not another minute or two, another few seconds for people to complete this. You can see a clear trend on environmental and water quality benefits, but that sustainable growth and land use policy is also conservation. Okay. All right. I think that's probably going once, going twice. There we go. So that's good to see. So this will help us kind of inform us in how we talk about this and what's important in terms of community values. Okay, let's switch to go to the next question. And this is what, where's the second question? There we go. What are the biggest challenges the One Water effort will have to overcome? Lack of political support, historic silos between the agencies, lack of public awareness or public misunderstanding, lack of agency funding, or any others. So we'll give you a couple seconds to fill this out. And this is really good to see this kind of response. Historic silos seems to be winning the day, but a close second. Okay. Give it another couple seconds. And why don't we wrap it up there? So that's helpful. That's helpful. That's insightful. Historic silos clearly is the first one, but agency funding, lack of public awareness, also close behind. So that is very helpful. We're, like I said, going to take this discussion today, your questions that you've asked, and refine this survey out here in the next few weeks. Please be on the lookout for it, and we look forward to your input. And with that, Miles, do you want to still do the fourth Q&A section, or should we just go right to John?
Yeah, let's check in with Alex real quick, see if we've got any outstanding questions. Otherwise, I think we can move it right to John.
We don't have any additional questions that I see, so I think we're good to move on.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all. And I'll turn it over to John now.
Okay, great. So if we take a look at next steps and kind of where we go from here. Earlier you saw a simplified version of this chart that shows kind of the overall workflow diagram. If you could go ahead and advance that. So we've got a series of project coordination and workshops. We're here at the first community meeting. You see that in the blue eye there. And as we noted earlier, there will be two more. There will be a second touch point, both with the One Water Advisory Group and then also a forthcoming survey that Steve was just referring to. And then in the first quarter of 2021, there will be a joint meeting of the One Water Advisory Group and of the community. And this is to help support us as we go through the different phases that you see down below in the tasks. We started out with some envision phases with kickoff, discovery, collecting data and identifying gaps in the data. Now doing the watershed evaluation, where we're looking into One Water project opportunities that Inga referred to. And we're also on a parallel path, developing a system for monitoring progress towards implementing the One Water plan over time with performance goals and a monitoring system for that, kind of a report card, if you will, on how we're doing. And then we're also developing implementation strategies. I mentioned how we're looking at different ways that we can make sure that we have avenues to implement and achieve the goals and strategies that were developed back in the first couple of tasks. And that'll all be written up in the One Water plan. And that's when we'll be coming back for the final community meeting to talk through that and kind of where this is headed.
Awesome, John. That's
okay,
a great summary. Perfect. So with that, final thoughts. We wanted to make sure, after seeing the approach, hearing about really what the opportunities, what the challenges, and really what the goals are going to be, wanted to make sure that with the 5 minutes or so we had remaining, we hear from the group one last time. And also the project email's up here too. So if you've got a question that you didn't get a chance to ask tonight, shoot us an email at onewater@denvergov.org. Let us know, we'll get back to you. If you'd just like to sign up for project updates, shoot us an email. We'll make sure you stay up to date on where we go from here. With that, Alex, do we have any other questions that have come in?
We haven't had any other questions come in just yet, but while we have the time, would you mind telling everyone what the website they should go to if they'd like to find the meeting recording?
Yes, and I'll throw it in the chat because we're working to get us a short URL. If you got the email, you got the bit.ly email address, but the best way to find it, I will tell you now while we work on our shortened URL, is just by Googling Denver One Water Plan, and you'll get a City and County of Denver website that'll take you right there. The actual URL itself is very long, so I'm not going to read it out to you because it's not digestible. Nobody's going to retain it, but we'll toss it in the chat. And again, just use your Google device and Google Denver One Water Plan, and you'll be able to find that link. We're sending emails out to about 500 people right now. So again, if you want updates, we'll send you that link directly if you email us at onewater@denver. Buy enough time for any last minute questions?
Yes, we have one more. So this is from David Riordan asking, what are the plans for changes in stormwater treatment? He said that it seems like the Denver street storm drains lead straight to the waterways.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Dave, I think you're probably on tap to answer the first cut of that. And maybe because it's a World Series night, we'll say that Barb Chatunga is on deck.
Yeah, so our water quality group that administers our EPA MS4 permit are looking at the full suite of tools for treating water quality from our stormwater systems, including vaults, some new nets at the end of the thing. We do UV treatment at the end of pipe. We do have regulations and policies in place to trigger water quality capture volumes that are in line with Barb's, the Mile High Flood District's criteria. So there are things in there, you just might not see them all the time. And obviously they're very challenging to try to capture all of that.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Dave, and just wanted to add that, parcels or buildings that sit maybe next to a street that may receive some of the stormwater that falls from that building into the street, there are also requirements within that building to treat water. And so even before some of that water goes into the inlets, it's gone through some level of water quality enhancement, and then it goes into the inlet system and has those things that Dave spoke to. And then when it leaves the pipe and gets into the river corridor, we put in some of those green spaces, the riparian buffers, for exactly the reason of, again, enhancing the water before it gets into the physical water. And so it may not be obvious to the naked eye, but there are a series of treatment practices put into place to hopefully continue to enhance that water before it gets into the river.
That's a great summary, Dave and Barb, and I think really that's what this is all about too, is looking at, as we move forward and manage water more holistically, tying up all of those uses, all of those treatment processes together so that they're complementary and working together instead of those historic silos we've talked about. Alex, any final questions? I know we're right at 1:30.
We don't have any additional questions.
Well, perfect timing. And then I just want to, again, thank everybody, all the participants. We had a really good turnout tonight. I think we were up around 75 at one point. We're down to about 50 now. And I think that's probably because it's a World Series night. And as we heard today, LA has a one water plan. So I don't really have a dog in the hunt, but LA's got a one water plan. So I'm going to say go Dodgers. And thanks to the core planning team and everybody else who joined us here tonight. Great participation. We look forward to a future discussion with you. And thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.